Yeat's newest album, 2093, to me is frankly incredible. I know we're only very shortly into the year, but definitely my favorite project of the year so far. As someone who is already a pretty big Yeat fan, it's just awesome to see him go headfirst into this futuristic sci-fi, cyberpunk type sound. Some of the most experimental, adventurous, and coolest sounding music he's made to date. His vocals at this point in his career, he's just perfected the range he has, the different flows, melodies, all that. He's an excellent performer, top of his craft in that sense. But I think what I'm resonating with most about this album, and it's something that I feel like I've always resonated with Yeat's music more than the average listener, is the lyrics. Now, I'm not the first to point that out with this project, but the way conceptually he explores his relationship with drugs, his drug abuse, his newfound sobriety, his general mental health, his connection to society, to the world, just feeling like an outcast, like an alien. All these ideas he's exploring on this album. I feel like in the past, a lot of Yeat's music, very drug addicted, very drug influenced, very trippy, and definitely a lot of lyrics that just sound silly. I can totally understand why before he was not someone taken for his lyrics, not taken seriously as a lyricist, just one of those guys you listen to for the vibe. And I get that because the vibe of his music is immaculate. It's amazing. He's consistently been making some of the best produced, best mastered, best engineered, just best sounding, crisp, perfectly textured, rage, pop rap, trap, cloud rap, whatever you want to call it. Just his niche sound that he's honed and perfected to, he just has a signature sound now. You hear that song he had on the Drake record, like you instantly know that's not a Drake song with a Yeat feature. That's a Yeat feature, or that's a Yeat song with a Drake feature. You know what I mean? He's definitely crafted and honed that sound to perfection, to the point where, like, if you're just an audiophile, just on a technical level, the way he's able to get his music to sound is so rich, so immersive, so deep, just beautiful, beautifully clean. But definitely someone, again, whose lyrics were just dismissed as like silly or goofy, twizzy, twin, like all that type of shit in a Tonka. And he definitely has his goofier moments that lend to part of his appeal and that build his character. But at the heart of a lot of his music, including his older stuff, there's a sadness, you know what I mean? There's pain, there's demons, there's an emptiness, a hollowness there. And it's a similar feeling, a similar reason why I listen to artists like Lucky or Future or guys in that kind of vein, where it's just really cathartic to hear them kind of exercise their demons and talk about their traumas and stuff over a song. And people don't usually put Yeat in that category. But even when I think about my own experience with Yeat, this isn't intentional, but when I think about the periods where I've been most into him, when I initially first got into him and was listening to him heavy, it was after my first ever breakup. It was like something I was listening to for catharsis, even though it may not have felt like that at the time, or I may not have realized it, but when I look back, that's clearly what was happening. And the same thing, when I had my next big Yeat phase, not that I wasn't a fan anymore, but I'm sure you guys know how it goes. You go through phases where you listen to some artists more than others. And my next big phase with Yeat was when I was going through some like personal turmoil back home. Like I was just at a crossroads. I was working kind of a dead-end job that I did like. I liked the people I worked for and with, but minimum wage, really hard on the body, not much upward mobility. Like I clearly couldn't stay there, but I didn't know if I wanted to go back to school. I didn't know if I wanted to look for, I was just at a crossroads. I was just confused. I was kind of down, and just happened to be at that period of the time, started listening to lots of Yeat again. And then now here we are, however much longer later, and I wouldn't say I'm finding myself in any particular life situation like that that's drawing me back to Yeat's music, but it's more so just in general, what he's expressing on this album here. Everything about it is just resonating with me, my own life experience, even if I don't directly relate to it. It's just, I'm having a lot of really cool experiences just diving into what Yeat is saying on this project. And actually my very first conscious impression of this record, my very first thought, I listened to the first track, put on Psycho CEO, it was bang, and I was nodding my head, yada yada, but I wasn't really thinking about it. The first conscious thought that just popped into my head listening to this album, it probably occurred about halfway through Power Trip, like halfway in the second song. It was just a very simple phrase. I just thought, Yeat is boy therapy. It sounds silly, it sounds goofy, it sounds memey, like I'm joking, but I thought it in a very serious sense. I was like, Yeat is boy therapy. And what do I mean by that exactly? Again, in the same way I put guys like Future or Lucky in the same camp. It's in the sense that men, especially in, the modern, not just the modern world, but pretty much since organized society, the way that you're socialized is more so to suppress your feelings, not to talk about them, just to deal with them on your own, put a lot of burdens on your back. It's a sign of weakness to talk about your flaws, your demons, your things dragging you down. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not that you won't have them, but you gotta deal with it on your own. And just this idea of, finding different coping mechanisms that are anything but actually going to see a therapist, actually getting professional licensed help. Like, that's the last thing in the world that you're allowed to do as a man, right? So, and you see memes about this. Like, this is why this thought popped in my head. I always see these memes where it's like, guys will do anything except going to therapy. It's like, it's like a guy, I don't know, jumping off a bridge or like strapping a rocket on, I don't know, just crazy shit, right? It's like guys will do anything except go to therapy. And there's a lot of truth to that, for sure. It's obviously a broad stereotype and generalization, but like a lot of stereotypes, there's a lot of truth to it, and I resonate with it personally. I've spoken to therapists in my life, but it's always hard for me to get in there, always hard for me to open up, and it feels ingrained into me, like, this is wrong, I'm not allowed to do this, And I don't even, at the moment, I don't consciously think of it, I'm not allowed to do this as a man, but when I think of why I feel like I'm not allowed to do it, I do feel like it kind of does often come back to my masculinity and how, not even saying my parents did this to me, but just in general, how society kind of, again, socializes you, just the stuff you internalize about yourself. And I strongly believe that's one of the driving factors behind the current men's youth mental health crisis that we're seeing. Of course, we're seeing rising rates in women as well, but as far as I'm aware of, this is what I've read, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but especially young men's mental health is just at an all-time low. And there's so many different factors to that, but I do think one of them is that it's hard for us to ask for help. It's hard for us to ask for therapy. It's hard to us to get to the place where we can accept that kind of thing. So what do we do instead? Yeah, we do all this other stuff, and one of the biggest things is music. Music is catharsis, it's therapeutic for everybody. That's not new, but it's different in this sense because it's not like you're going to listen to A Crow Looked at Me by Mount Eerie. That album shows its depression, its sorrow, its grief on its sleeve. You know what you're getting. I could name countless examples. I won't go there, but it is different with what I'm talking about with a Future, a Lucky, a Yeat, and to varying degrees for each of these artists. But yeah, a lot of their music is flexing and bragging and talking about their money and cars and clothes and jewelry and women, if I didn't already say that already, and drugs and lavish lifestyle. And it's coded in this materialistic glaze that I think distracts a lot of people and causes them to think that that's the ethos of the music, that's the heart of it. It's really just vapid. It's really just nonsensical. It's just about the vibe, right? The lyrics don't actually mean anything. Someone like me interprets it in a very different way. Like, all this materialist stuff, all this lavish lifestyle, expensive stuff, it's not portrayed as desirable even, okay? Occasionally maybe it is, yeah, rich flex, all that type of stuff, like, no problems type of lifestyle, no financial problems type of lifestyle. But to me, there's so much sadness at the core of these guys' music, and it's not just when they're talking about the past, it's the present included. It's you see that video of Shaq recently going around on the internet where he's talking to a younger guy and he's saying like family comes first above all this shit, and he's like just talking about the regrets he made with his family, and then he says something about, I'm alone in a 100,000 square foot house. And that what Shaq said in that interview, I feel like that's the entire ethos of this album here, of other rappers in this lane. That's the vibe I get. It's like, yeah, sure, they're talking about all this stuff, but it doesn't sound like it fulfills them in any meaningful way. In fact, what it always comes across as, and I think deliberately so, is these are just band-aids. These are just, things I'm covering up my real problems with because I don't want to fucking deal with them. Not only do I not want to, maybe I do want to, I don't know how to deal with them, is really more so the point. We're not taught how to deal with that type of shit, not taught how to ask for help, any of that kind of stuff. So instead, you man up, you put on your game face, you go out, you make money, you fuck bitches, all that type of shit. You do drugs till your mind's spinning, till you can't even worry about shit no more. And you just live this roller coaster of a life where you don't even have time to stop and think about your problems, right? You're just barreling towards an early grave, usually. Or if you're lucky, right, you keep narrowly dodging death, but you're always on the friggin' edge. I think of the song, one of my favorite Chief Keef, underrated Chief Keef songs is Chances, I think it's called, with Young Scooter. And just the chorus on that song just, I think, perfectly expresses this idea of You know, when you're living this kind of lifestyle, you're just constantly gambling with your life, constantly on the edge. Like, you never know when that next roll of the dice is going to be your last one. You know, it's dark, but it's realistic. And that's the same, again, just vibe I get from this style of music. So talking about Yeat specifically and why this album here, just that phrase, Yeat is boy therapy, to me means so much more. Like with this album here, is I feel like Yeat is taking this kind of idea that I'm talking about, that I've seen again in artists like Future's music for so long. And I keep saying Future and Lucky because they're easy examples, but I could name many more, but that's not the point. You know what style of music I'm talking about. But I love with this album that Yeat has kind of taken that implicit thing that I've always felt in this style of music, and he's just made it explicit. Again, this whole album is about his journey to sobriety. But I think the biggest kick in the balls, you know, I could go on a whole tirade exploring how he arrives at this point, but just to rip the Band-Aid off, like the big kick in the balls of this album is he does get sober, he achieves his goal. As far as I'm aware, like in real life, he actually has sobered up. But the kick in the balls is that it hasn't changed that much for him, or at least it hasn't like fixed, you know, those problems at the core. It hasn't stopped him from feeling like an alien, which he keeps referencing on this album, talking about he doesn't even know where his planet is. He feels like he's far from home, but he doesn't know how to call home. And that imagery, you know, it fits well with the sci-fi theme, and on its surface just may sound kind of, you know, you've heard that a ton, like, oh, I'm an alien, whatever, but the way he expresses it, it's just, there's just so much sadness there. Like, it really feels like I don't know where my planet is. I don't know where my people are. Like, I just feel totally like an alien on this planet, and how could you not when, you know, this guy is 23, I think about to turn 24. I just Googled before recording this, and he's been super popular, super hyped up in the limelight since 2021, when he would have been, I guess, 21 years old. So, you know, think about that. Your early 20s, someone like myself, very similar age to Yeat, we're just figuring this life shit out, man. Like, I got no idea what the hell my life's gonna look like in 10 years. I'm trying to set that up, trying to build the blocks, the foundation for my future, but it's a very uncertain time where you're still getting to know yourself. Like, there's still lots to learn. You're still developing as a human being. Obviously, it's not the same as your formational years, but it's still like, what is happening right now in my life is very formulative to who I am going to be. And Yeat, for the past 3-4 years, has been in the spotlight, hyped up, one of the most rabid fan bases. You know, he jokingly on his life project, on I think the song Talk, you know, he calls them his cult. You know, my cult is you fucking with me, as he says. But the way they act, hey, you can't even blame him for saying that. You know, a lot of artists, modern artists, have cult-like fan bases, but Yeat fans are something else. And I do mean that in a good way. Mostly, you know, I love when people are that passionate about artists, when it doesn't veer into creepy territory. It's just, people are just expressing themselves, feeling energetic, because it's energetic music. It's music that lifts the spirit, you know, if it hits the right way for you. So I'm not hating, but like, that's got to do something to you, right? And it's only been, I guess, like 3-ish years of that for him. Imagine someone like Kanye. You know, we love to shit on Kanye. I won't go there. That's a whole other area, but someone like that in the spotlight for 20 years, paparazzi always in your face, like, that shit's got to mess you up. But still, 3 years of it from what Yeat's had, like, I can totally see how that is isolating, how that's making you feel more alone than ever. Like, he may have felt that way before the fame, but the fame, the lifestyle, that shit has probably just worsened it. Like I was talking about, like, all this materialistic shit, all this diamonds and gold and jewels and money and clothes and cars and blah, blah, blah. What does that actually do? What void does that fill? It doesn't fill a void. And that's exactly what Yeat is talking about on this album. You know, he's talking about, I just spent $250,000 on a Cullinan. I just spent $250,000 on a Butler man. Like, just talking about all this shit he's spending his money on, blah, 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 blah. But what does he say on that exact song, that song that I titled this video after? He says, a lot of things change, people don't change. And he's talking about his fucking self. Okay, I'm gonna just get into that song now, because I titled my video after it for a reason, because I think it perfectly encapsulates this whole album in one little bite. But nothing changed, man. Nothing changed. Is it nothing changed, like with a D, or nothing changed? I can't remember. But that song, it's funny, because, you know, a big reason I'm loving this album so much is the soundscape is so different and progressive and an advancement for Yeat. But this is actually one of the few songs on the album that, you know, I feel like you could put this on Afterlife, you could put this on Life, you could put this on Up to Me, right? It wouldn't feel out of place on any of his older projects either. But it's one of my favorites, not because, like, musically it's wowing me. I like it musically for the same reason I like his old stuff, but it's the lyrics. You know, when I first heard this thing, just the way it opens up, live a lot of life, not a thing has changed. A lot of things change, people don't change. I know it's so simple. And he's rhyming the word change with change, and it's just whatever. But there's something about it, and the way he says it too, with just such a defeated, serious earnestness. I don't know, that just, it speaks to me, and it's just like, I feel what he means by that. I feel, it's a couple very simple sentences, or even just take the one line, a lot of things change, people don't change. That one very simple line, I just feel like says everything that he needs to say. You know what I mean? I could spend half an hour here gushing about that one simple line. And I do think he's talking about other people. I do think he's talking about people in his life, people from his past, people from before he was famous, probably hasn't seen in a while, comes back, is like, damn, people really don't change. But I think most of all, he's talking about himself. Because again, on the back half of this album, near the end, he makes this a lot more explicit. When he has lines about, I'm fiending for dopamine, or he has lines about, I may be sober now, but I still don't feel nothing, lines that really make it clear that even though he's undergone this huge personal development, and it is something to definitely be applauded, something I encourage, something that makes me really happy to see that Yeat has gotten sober, especially, I've talked a bit before about my own journey with drugs and getting over that shit and trying to come to sobriety, but I'm lucky enough to say that I never was in with the opioids, and that shit, if you guys know, like, that's the worst fucking shit to be into. Once you're like, it's the hardest shit to quit, hardest shit to get off of. If you know anything about, the dope sickness that happens to people coming off of opioid withdrawals, if you just understand how opioids change your chemical makeup, all that shit, just, it is, it's a really bad demon to have, a hard demon to kick. And I know that that was maybe Yeat's biggest indulgence, at least his music made it seem like it. And so for him, like, if it's really true that he has gotten himself off of that shit, which from what I can tell it is, like, that deserves a huge round of applause, and it's definitely something to celebrate even for himself. But imagine just the emotional gut punch, man. It really is, of just like, I've put in all this fucking work, I've struggled for so long, like, I've been sober and relapse and sober and relapse and in and out and constantly, and then I'm finally fucking sober. I finally did it. I got to the other side. I got to 2093. I kind of shout out to Bob the Pop, the GOAT, but I really loved his analysis, dissection with the album. I don't personally not agree. I like all his ideas. I personally have some different interpretations from him on some stuff. But one thing I really like, his idea of how 2093 is meant to conceptualize sobriety, right? Like, he's trying to get to 2093. He's trying to get sober. And I think a lot of the lyrics back it up. When he says on one of the songs, he's like, I've been to 2093, but I fucking came back every time, or whatever he says there. Just this idea of like, I've been sober, but I always fall back here, which again, as someone who's in his own way struggled with addiction, such a fucking relatable and brilliant line there. But yeah, he just, the way 2093 feels is like this idealized place of sobriety that he's trying to get to, that, feels in the distant future, but is tangible, is attainable with, enough work and progression and just keeping at it. And it's like, he gets there again, but it's just like, I'm still the same, right? I'm still feeling empty. I still feel isolated, alone. The way he talks about himself on this album is like, especially in the kind of CEO framing he has, like, across this album, I think that motif is him kind of assuming this uncaring, narcissistic's not the right word, but just like ruthless, just all for himself kind of personality. And it's very interesting the way he talks on those songs when he is in that kind of CEO mode, because it's like, you can almost feel that he's disgusted with himself in a little bit, or you can almost feel that he's just like, he's like, I know that I'm being a shitty person, but fuck it, like, this is just what it is. That's almost what it feels like. It feels like he's so defeated. It's like, man, I've got sober, all this shit, and I'm still fucking whatever. Like, fuck it, I'm just gonna be a boss. I'm just gonna be this evil, ruthless, capitalist CEO, you know what I mean? Like, fuck everybody else, that's all I got. And there's something tongue-in-cheek about it, but again, it just adds to this sadness of like, you know what I mean? You strive for something so much, and I'll just give my own perspective. I do think there's truth to it, Aiming for sobriety is 100% worth it, and to anybody watching who's, struggling with addiction or anything themselves, my heart is with you, and, I know that it's not always, it's not as simple as just, I'm going to quit today. It never is. And if you yourself have struggled with addiction or had a loved one or a friend, like, that. But it's, all I'm trying to say is that just, like, it's still a goal worth striving for. I'm personally glad I did it. I still do indulge in the occasional marijuana. I'm trying to wean off of that as well, but I haven't touched as they say, hard drugs, and I think over 3 years now. So, it's been a good journey for me, and it's definitely been a positive thing in my life. But I do think there's a lot of truth to the case. It's like when you do first get sober, like when you finally get that monkey off your back and you're finally in a place where like, you're past withdrawals, you're past that early stage of like itching and like thinking about it all the time. Like you're finally, a couple months, whatever, and you're just, you're chill. It's like, I don't need this. It's like you're finally, you feel comfortable saying that you're sober and not like trying to get sober. When you first get to that place, it's a victory. It's like, yes, I did it. But then you kind of look inwards and you realize like, oh, like I was using these drugs, I was using these substances to cover up for so many problems that are just not inherent within me, but that have just been there even before the drugs, and maybe some that developed because of them. But it's just, I was just covering up for all this stuff that, just getting off drugs doesn't fix it. It doesn't go the extra mile, right? Like that's step one. And that's the fucked up part, because when you're deep in the thralls of addiction, that shit feels like 12 Mount Everest stacked on top of each other, and you got to climb it, without gear. You got to climb it nude, in the nude, right? Like it feels impossible, feels totally gargantuan. It's like, that is your fight, right? That's the dragon you got to slay. It's addiction. But the hard fucking truth is that even once you slay that dragon, you got 100 more to go. You know what I mean? You got to learn how to be a fucking human again, honestly. You got to learn how to feel without being under the influence. You got to learn how to trust. You got to learn how to trust yourself. You got to learn how to love yourself, because a common denominator for almost all drug users is low self-esteem. It's like, do you believe you deserve better? Do you believe you have what it takes to put in the work to earn better, to get better, right? Like, for years, I had very low self-esteem, and it wasn't until I started to get a little confidence that I was finally able to go out and say, you know what, fuck it, I do deserve better than this shit. You know what I mean? And so the way that is expressed on this album, that idea of like this whole battle with drug addiction and finally getting there just to be like, shit, I'm still the same guy as before, man, it hits. It really does. And all over this album is great lyrical detail in that sense. Like lyrically, again, I personally think this type of stuff has been in Yeat's music always, but it was more buried when he was more directly going through it. Whereas now that he's on the other side, I feel like he can be more explicit and open up about it. But I think even like by his standards, as someone who has always appreciated the lyrical aspect of his music, I still think this is by far the best lyrically he's been, the most moving, the most potent, the most cohesive. Like this really does it feel like a concept album, not just musically, but in what he's talking about. It all feels like it's telling the story of the same battle, the same fight, the same introspective moment he's going through in life. And it's really been doing it for me. So I could, be the 1,000th reviewer to hop on here talking about how great the music is. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say it's great because it is. It's forward thinking. It's futuristic. It's synthy. It's dancey. It's explosive. It's chill. I don't know. It's everything. It's a cinematic IMAX experience for your ears. It lives up to that in spades. Choruses across his album, catchy as hell. Yeat's melody's beautiful. His vocal presentation, delivery, everything, killing it, right? But the reason this album, has just spoke to me on a different level, it really is just that step up in the lyrics and just the whole concept. And so I could rave about it for days, but I'm really just gonna focus on that one idea here. Is just what I wanted to come on here and talk about. And just that song, Nothing Changed, I'm telling you. Even that line, I don't think I mentioned it, when he says, I want to feel like normal human, don't want to pop a pill. That's probably a very relatable frustration for any drug addict. It's like, man, it's like you guys are really out here just raw dogging this life shit. Like you're able to just have fun and feel good and feel normal sober. Like what the hell? What the hell? And then when you can get there yourself, it's a beautiful feeling. But like I said, it's more than just getting off the drugs. The drugs alone, they're holding you back. It's a creature comfort, it feels like they're getting you through, but really they're just kind of sucking the life force out of you and just kind of making you less and less of a human. And it's like, it's definitely worth it to get off, but that's only step one. And that's, it's a hard truth that I've never heard expressed so perfectly in music, honestly. So for that, I just have to give Yeat the biggest round of applause. I think for someone whose music has been so drug heavy and has been so cathartic to myself and many other young male drug users, and I'm sure many female drug users as well, but I do really think there's a thing just happening today with young men that we do need to talk about. We need to uplift our young men and tell them you're not fucking alone, okay? And you're allowed to express your feelings. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to seek out help. It's not weak. It's actually strong of you, okay? It takes a lot of strength. That's how I see it for myself, you know? When I got to the place where I could even consider seeing a therapist, where I can actually advocate for myself, go see my family doctor, ask for referrals, like say, I need this, like to get to that point takes strength. So we gotta rewrite the narrative and all that. But in the meantime, in the world we live in where that narrative is not rewritten, and you know, we do have a whole generations of young men growing up feeling like, you know, just that whole self-conscious, that whole what do you call it, mindful part of your brain is just totally suppressed. You can't even access it. You know, this type of music, like, it speaks to a lot of young men for a reason. And so for someone like Yeat, who has been speaking to young men struggling in that way already, for him to put his own journey to sobriety on display like this, but also not to sugarcoat it, not to tell people like, hey, once you get clean, everything is great, your life's fixed, boom, that's all it takes. For him to do it for real, but also to just make it honest and blunt, and again, not to sugarcoat it, I just have so much respect for this. And I can only hope that it inspires a lot of his younger fans who are, you know, again, struggling with this shit themselves. I can only hope it inspires them to, you know, maybe further lock in and try their own fight. But again, like I said, if you have any loved ones in your life struggling with this type of stuff, you got to have empathy for them, because it's never as simple as like, today I'm ready to quit, you know? Quitting is a complicated thing, but it only ever happens from within, and it only ever happens like it's like a switch flips inside you, you know what I mean? Like one day you're able to, the next day you're not. Like it's a short window. That's really what it is, in my opinion. Like it in terms of addiction, getting out, it's like you get these windows. It's like for weeks, you know, you may want to quit. Like that's in my thoughts, like, fuck, like why am I, because it just becomes, you don't even think about it, right? It just becomes part of your routine. You just do it, and it's like, you don't even want to be doing it. You'll be in the middle of doing it. It's like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I don't even want to be high, right? But it's just part of the fucking routine. It's just like mindless, right? It's your subconscious. So, you know, you'll be there for weeks, months, even years for some people, right? Just like, oh, I want to quit. I hate this. I hate my life, but you can't actually do it. But then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, a window opens up for whatever reason, and you can say no. Like, but it's only brief, right? You might get that window. It's not like that window is then open for the next week. It's like, no, you might have 1 or 2 days where that window's open, and you can actually say, okay, I'm fucking doing this shit, right? But all I'm trying to say is that, I think at the end of the day, an album like this can only be positive, and that, you know, just that can mean a lot, right? Seeing like, hey, this is a musician I love that I've been following and who's gone through similar struggles to me. It's like, hey, if he can fucking do this shit, then I can too, right? So, man, addiction's a mess. It's a fucking horrible thing that affects a lot of people around the world, man. But it's one of the most cruel and vicious diseases, honestly, that someone can be dealt, especially again when it's of the opioid variety. So I think there's only positive things that can come out of what he did with this album here. And I know for me personally, it's been meaning a lot to me, and has definitely led to some emotional but also really fun listens. So there you guys have it. That's my, not review, but my little take, just wanted to get this off my chest about Yeat's 2093. I just want to also add at the end of this video that I actually broke my laptop a couple weeks ago. I did get a new one, but I used to edit all my videos on Final Cut Pro, which I bought when I was like 16, and I was still on my dad's iTunes account or whatever. But you know, for the past 4 or 5 years or whatever, I've been on my own iTunes account. But that means that now when I got my new computer, I tried to do the iCloud backup. I was like, shit, I have Final Cut. So I'm trying to see if I can, like, I don't know, log into my dad's old whatever, download the app, and then get back into mine. But I tried that the other day. It wasn't really working. I don't know. I'm not very technologically knowledgeable, especially with that kind of stuff. So if you guys can let me know in the comments, maybe if there's any way to like stay on my Apple account, but to get a purchase I made on another account, I don't even know. But basically what I'm trying to say is that my editing capabilities are very limited at the moment. So I had recorded a bunch of videos, and I had a bunch more planned that I was going to be doing. But unfortunately, a lot of them are shelved, or just like my output in general is going to be very little to almost non-existent. I wasn't even planning on making this video, but this album just inspired it out of me. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, but I just wanted to add that at the end to say, that if my uploads just honest, I might just not upload for a few months. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. Maybe I'll figure it out, but if I don't, I probably won't be making a lot of videos. But that being said, you never know with me. All it takes is one album to just really get me worked up and to just want to rant about it, for me to just come and randomly turn on the camera and say some things. So you never know, but just wanted to give that heads up. Otherwise, hope you guys are all having a great day. Let me know your thoughts about this album down in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.